Hi everyone and welcome to my Flurry Rogue Guide in Season 10. This is a build I had a ton of fun with lately and I want to show it off to you guys. So this is a melee rogue that just flies through maps and Flurry is back in action this time around. It's probably the overall best rogue build I would say. Of course there is Death Trap, but it's extremely hard to gear in order to outperform this. So this just kind of works from level 1, you can start blasting, and what you see here is not even like a fully optimized setup. I'm still missing a pretty important chaos piece, for example, so this can actually speed farm 90-second runs up into the mid 80s or something like this if you really min-max this, and it easily pushes into like the 110 plus range as well. So this is an amazing rogue build. You fly through the maps with 4 different mobility options. So we have dash, shadow step, flurry itself that moves you, and the jar room for the teleport. And like this, you kind of just like, rush from pack to pack, instantly dash in. If you have played, for example, Shred Druid before, then this is fairly similar because you also move from pack to pack like this. And you have this circular AoE from the flurry attacks, plus your shadow clone also randomly hitting stuff in an area around it that just destroys everything. So even without like a perfect setup, I was easily speed farming Tome 4 and even layer bosses in Tome 4 in seconds. And I will show you what I have in my planner in a moment. But yeah, overall super fun to play a build, very good at farming, and it pushes decently high as well. So if you're looking for some rogue action, I think this is what you should go with. Here's my planner. I based this on Matthias's max rogue guide. So he has written the updated Flurry endgame guide here. So I took his planner and then made some adjustments, but it's largely the same build. So you can also go check out the written guide here with all of the details and the progression and so on. I have this planner here. I left out some of the starter stuff and so on. I kept the pit pushing unchanged, but I did make some tweaks here on the like standard variants, which you can also find here. So I put this into the notes. So I changed a bit of the paragons, runes, and so on from the max rogue guide, just for you to be aware. But yeah, the TLDR is we use Flurry as our main attack, and Flurry has this upgrade here called Improved Flurry that heals you and also dashes you to the target. So this also gives the mobility tag to Flurry, which is very nice because, for example, we can use the Moni rune here, and I use Monique, the Moni plus Q combo, so we get bulwarks all the time. The reason for bulwark is mostly because I played hardcore. I don't think you strictly need it, but it did make it feel a lot more comfortable when it comes to survivability, and this made it so that I didn't really have to worry about anything, even running around with like 10% life or something like that, because we use the beast cornered. So every time we spend resources, we lose life, and we don't really get a lot of life and resources back instantly all the time. Now, Flurry does heal you by itself, so this is like part of the skill here as well, where like it heals you over 1.5 seconds. And we also have, for example, siphoning strikes to heal us. So as long as you are attacking an enemy and not just hitting the air, you actually heal up again, and you are pretty tanky, especially with the bulwark up. But even without healing, the bulwark will protect you. So this is kind of like one of the big changes I've done. And we have a lot of damage reduction. Beast Cornered itself gives you damage reduction. We have the Dark Shrouds, of course, from the Rogue. And we also have Mad Guard for the extra res and armor, and extra barrier generation as well. So this just helps to stay alive even when you have very low life pool. In addition to that, this build is actually incentivized to always be at 0 energy and spend life in order to deal more damage. This is part of the Flurry build with the Death Mask of Nimitruk, which is usually a helm, but it is also a chaos item. But for example, on my setup, I was still running this helm because I didn't have a chaos version of this. So I'm actually missing the Perdition helm there, which is a huge multiplier. And you saw me flying for those 79s, for example. But with this helm here, we get a ton of damage, a ton of attack speed, but we have to spend life in order to do so. And well, it is very easy in Season 10 because we have Power Siphon. So with Power Siphon, you reduce your maximum current resource every time you attack. And since we attack very quickly, we basically cap our maximum energy at nothing. And this means we always spend life with the Death Mask. And like this, we first of all want to heal this up again, but also we can profit from stuff like Dark Dance. And this is a huge multiplier as well. So this is a 120% X multiplier that you can put on your neck here. Every time you spend life, you get a massive damage boost, and almost every single attack we do is spending life. So this is an insane multiplier here. So effectively, we don't care about energy at all. We can get all of the damage buffs here from stuff like Power Siphon, and we just spend our life, but we also heal it back up with siphoning strikes, and in addition to that, we have our bulwark to keep us safe. And this makes for a really great combo with tons of damage output. In addition to that, our last Chaos perk is Enervated Strikes, which is also another really big damage multi here, 150% X, but we can no longer passively generate energy. And this is actually not a downside at all, because again, we spend life anyway, thanks to the Death Mask. So as soon as I have this item, you will have no energy worries at all ever again, effectively, because you just spend a life, you get this damage buff from Dark Dance, and we don't worry about, having no energy anyway. So you can also just, randomly attack the air, you don't really run out of energy. And for example, we don't have to invest into innovation, we don't have to invest into lucky hit, chance to restore resources or anything like that. And it's just all coming from like the skill itself and siphoning strikes with the heals. Now for the rest of the setup, there's a bunch of really big aspects that you want to capitalize on. So there's Encircling Blades, which gives you the 360 flurry. Then we have Vehement Brawler here. This is for our Shadow Clone, and also gives us a damage buff. That's kind of nice. We do rely on a Shadow Clone to deal a lot of damage anyway. We have Stolen Vigor. This is for the Momentum key passive. A very powerful key passive, also gives us extra damage reduction, speed, damage, and then this aspect synergy. And we have Epoch Furor. This is also for the Shadow Clone buff. So the Shadow Clone will generally deal more damage than you, but it's not as unbalanced as it used to be in like previous seasons, for example. Just kind of guesstimating from my gameplay, I would say the Shadow Clone does like maybe 2/3 of the total damage and you like 1/3 or so. So you do matter, and it's not just the Shadow Clone doing everything, but we do have a bunch of buffs for the Shadow Clone specifically. And we have the Breakneck Bandit as a second flurry specific aspect here that gives it more damage and also a chance to stun, so you have really nice crowd control options. And most of the other items are effectively just kind of like damage buffs. So here the Grasp of Shadow, maybe I'm gonna show the Ancestor version first. So this can be a chaos item as well, but it's normally a glove, so you put that here. We can also throw in the Penitent Greaves early on, for example. It gives you the chill and some extra crit. Then you can benefit from Frigid Finesse, for example. And well, depending on what you get with like Mythics and Chaos items, you can equip the Shroud, the Perdition, and then try to get like these Chaos versions of those other uniques. And also Fist of Fate is a really nice option. So here I have a ton of damage buffs from the unique effect itself. You get easy vulnerable application as well, and you have the lucky hit here to give us more, for example, heal procs and so on. Now, one interesting part that I noticed when playing this build is that despite us spending life all the time and actually reducing our maximum energy to effectively 0, we still occasionally actually get some of the energy spending effects like Preparation. So we use Preparation here, and it says spend 75 energy to reduce your ultimate cooldown and so on. But, well, we don't really spend energy, but sometimes it seems to happen that you spend a little bit anyway, and you actually do trigger the Preparation sometimes. And also every time you press your Shadow Clone, you get this damage reduction effect, which is nice. You reset all of your cooldowns, you get your Shadow Step back, you get your dash back, and also the Dark Shroud, for example, I have that here on the bar, so they can like press that every once in a while for the extra damage reduction. Shadow Clone itself also has damage reduction, the Dark Shroud has damage reduction, and we also have the Rugged passive, so we are relatively tanky, and this makes for like an overall pretty solid setup here, despite playing this low life version. Now for our item rolls, so it's important that you split your weapon tempers between Flurry and Shadow Clone. So one needs to go on the two-handed weapon and the other needs to go on both one-handed weapons. You see this here right now. You have the Shadow Clone deal double damage. You can reach 100% with those two weapons. And the same for Flurry. You can reach 100% with just one two-handed, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. You can do one or the other way around. As long as you like masterwork it appropriately, it is nearly the same outcome anyway in terms of the overall output. Just want to make sure that you hit 100% on both if you can. So especially once you masterwork your gear to like better values, you want to try to hit that. But it can be pretty tough to temper those weapons. We also want to get a bunch of Shadow Clone cooldown reduction. So despite Preparation, we don't spend that much energy and it doesn't trigger that often. So we need to keep our Shadow Clone cooldown relatively low. So you see here the setup has 10 seconds on the Shadow Clone. So we can actually keep it up permanently just like that. We can even keep up the Preparation damage reduction buff permanently like that. But we usually want to press it a bit more often anyway, because for example, we can also get the Unstoppable effect here, which is kind of neat. We have Unstoppable as well from the Stolen Vigor, but it's not always up. And here we get more consistency. But also when we recast the Shadow Clone, we reset the other cooldowns. So Dash and Shadow Step come back. So it's pretty nice to have a bunch of extra Shadow Clone cooldown reduction, and we put that on all of the jewelry. And for the offensive tempers, we just put damage per Dark Shroud Shadow everywhere. This is a pretty typical rogue thing. It's a very powerful temper because you usually have 5 Dark Shrouds, so you get a massive damage buff. But you need to remember to press this. You can also automate the Dark Shrouds. This is actually what Matthias had originally in the guide, but I'm too addicted to speed, so I put in a jar rune. You can run with a mod rune to get Dark Shrouds automatically, then you don't have to worry about pressing Dark Shroud, and you can even put, for example, the Smoke Grenade on the bar. And this is actually kind of like how this setup works here, where we have the Umbers aspect. Also, for example, before you get your Mythics or before you get some of those Chaos items, you can put this aspect. This is the same as the mod rune, for example, but even more consistent because you stack up the Dark Shrouds very quickly. So you can do this if you want to be a bit more lazy, but I like the speed, so I put Dark Shroud on the bar, and since we casted the Shadow Clone every few seconds anyway, we reset the cooldown, and we always have 5 shadows. And in terms of the gear that you want to roll, so you want a lot of life, a lot of dex, and maybe a bit of res and attack speed. So you see here the rings, for example, you want to make sure that you have enough. With Marred Guard, we have 85 maximum res, so you definitely want to invest into resistances, but we have triple diamonds. It's very easy to cap out the armor thanks to the Death Mask, which comes with a bunch of armor itself, and you should not really have to worry there. And for your amulet, the best passive to get is Weapon Mastery. This is a melee build for rogues, and Weapon Mastery gives you both benefits from both weapons. This is a very powerful passive here. So you basically get like ×2 the dagger effect. So especially for like one-shotting monsters in speedruns, this is extremely strong. So you'll try to get that, which I did not have in those clips at the start. And besides, on the skill tree, we don't really have that much going on. So this is basically just, you press your mobility whenever you can, you keep up the Shadow Clone, you keep up the Dark Shroud, and then there's Caltrops left, which I generally just throw on the boss. So I don't really use it like anywhere else, but whenever there's a pit boss or a lair boss, I put it down, you get a bit of a damage buff, and that's about it. You can also, for example, get a bit more damage in there, for example, for like higher pits. There is the cold version of Caltrops, and then you can also do stuff like Frigid Finesse. I actually left that out completely because for those speedruns, I don't have time for that basically. But this is a very powerful passive, and you can actually get a lot more damage out of this setup here if you invest into the cold and freezing. You can also do this, for example, with a rune. So you can do Sear and Full here. So this is like part of the pit pushing version here, where you can trigger the Frost Novas and then you get this cold buff. But yeah, for typical speedruns, I just focus on blasting everything down instantly. Also like not even staggering the bosses, we just like melt them down basically. And let's talk about the Paragons finally. So we have this setup here. There is one change I made. So here I have the Exploit Weakness board, and Matthias had the Cheap Shot board. Cheap Shot is extra damage against crowd controlled enemies, which is also really nice. And it has a 30% base multi, and with Exploit Weakness you have a 45% base multi. So effectively it's a bit of a consideration of boss damage versus not boss damage. And again, I wanted to optimize more towards bosses, so I went with this. But you can also go with the Cheap Shot, which is very good as well. You can just take the Maxwell Paragon if you want. But yeah, this is basically the setup. We have a lot of these like rare and magic node buffing glyphs, so there's versatility. This buffs our Shadow Clone, which benefits on most of the stuff. And this, for example, you have Fluidity. We just want to dash and Shadow Step all the time anyway, gives us a damage buff. We have Pride. We're doing a physical damage build, so this is a pretty nice glyph. Then we have Devious. So every time we apply a crowd control effect, which Flurry does by default, we get this stacking buff. And lastly, here's Chip. So there's also a physical damage glyph. And yeah, with our Paragon boards, we have the Exploit Weakness I mentioned for vulnerable damage. We apply vulnerable very easily. We have no witnesses, so this just gives us extra damage for 10 seconds when we cast an ult. We do that all the time. We have Lyrana's Instinct, which is just a damage buff for core skills. We don't care about the inner side effect here. And Dance Macabre. So this is also, we have mobility tag on Flurry itself. It just triggers by itself effectively. And that's pretty much it for the setup here. I can only recommend try out the Rogue if you haven't yet. Flurry Rogue is super fun, and you can use this build from the start. We also have a leveling guide here, for example, if you go to max roll and pick this here. This is one of the best like starting builds as well. You can literally play this on level 1 and then grind up your items and maybe eventually play something like Death Trap if you really enjoy the Rogue and get all that stuff together. But this was just a really great build to play in Season 10, so try it out. Hope you liked this video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time.